You're watching a special edition of CBS 4 News, tracking Hurricane Katrina.
Right now, live pictures from Pensacola in the Florida Panhandle, part of the Gulf Coast region that's getting a direct and devastating hit from Hurricane Katrina. CBS 4's Bryan Andrews is riding out this very powerful storm in the city of New Orleans, a very vulnerable city, I might add, and he filed this report for us just moments ago.
All right, this is how difficult it is covering the hurricane. We're coming out of the hotel, and this is the motor lobby here. I'm going to cross, I'm just looking to make sure we're not going to get whacked in the head with anything. As we're making our way over here. Come on, let's go this way. This buddy's from the New York Times. He's never been to a storm before. All right, whoa, what was that? All right, here we go. Let's see if we can get to the crevice. Take refuge and try to shoot some tape. The winds are really kicking. Come on in. All right, let's catch our breath for a second. This is what it's like just to get out the front door of the hotel. Now, I don't know if you can see it, but in the middle of Canal Street, there's a tree that's down. I'm gonna try to head out towards that mailbox right there and get a glimpse of what I can see, all right? Kevin, if you see something coming for me, just scream at me, all right? All right, I'm gonna crouch down and use this as cover. This is what it's like in downtown New Orleans right now. It is just after 8:20 in the morning Eastern time, and stuff is flying down the street. These are the hurricane force winds. All right, that's it, guys. I'm going to come back in. See, the debris goes flying. We're going to let it go. All right. Reporting from the hurricane in New Orleans. Come on, let's go for cover. Along with photographer Kevin Martels, we're going to go inside now. I'm Bryan Andrews for CBS 4.
Good decision. Bryan Andrews going inside after showing us in a very dramatic way the sheer power of the storm with the hurricane force winds battering that area of the Gulf Coast region of the U.S. And of course, a particular concern in New Orleans is flooding. We have some pictures right now coming. These are the latest pictures coming out of New Orleans, where there have been at least some reports of some of the levees giving way and flooding as high as 12 feet deep in some parts of New Orleans. The water level as high as 8 feet in one area and 12 feet in another area, so you know that there's going to be devastating destruction once it's all said and done in New Orleans as well as in other parts of the Gulf Coast region. Let's go right now to CBS 4 Chief Meteorologist Bryan Norcross in Weather Control. Bryan, what a powerful hurricane this is.
Elliot, this was a big one. This was like Hurricane Ivan last year, but bigger. In terms of power, it was about the same physical size, a vast hurricane covering hundreds of miles. Now, let's talk about what's going on right now, and then we'll get to that levee breach situation, which may turn out to be the most serious thing that's happened in this hurricane. Here's where the center is now. You see it's well inland. The storm is weakening, as you would expect over land, but still powerful as it's moving off to the north. And in these bands here, there is a high risk of tornadoes, and there have been reports of tornado touchdowns in Mississippi and in Alabama. Now, you see with the circulation like that, that's pulling in still the water here on the Gulf Coast. This is where we believe the highest storm surge was, on that Mississippi coast. Not that there wasn't storm surge in Louisiana and in the metropolitan New Orleans area, but that came in actually from the east, and David Bernard will explain exactly how that worked in just a moment. But right now, still the winds are strong off the Gulf here, holding that water high, and no doubt major flooding going along the Mississippi coast. Now, over here in Alabama, same story, just not as strong, but Mobile Bay is deep now in water, and I-10 is underwater across Mobile Bay. Over here in Pensacola, very strong cells moving through there as well, but the further you get from the hurricane, and by the way, this is about 175 miles from Pensacola to where the hurricane is here. So this is a big, big storm, the size storm that we haven't seen here in South Florida in memory. Actually, you have to go back, certainly back to the 1926 storm, 1928 storm, and I don't know that we've had a big one like this. Hurricane Donna in 1960 would be this kind of size storm. Now here you see the numbers as of the new advisory. There are the key ones, 105-mile-an-hour winds now, so Hurricane Katrina down to Category 2, moving along a little faster, north at 17. Fast is good because it just gets the wind and the rain and everything else out of the way faster. Pressure coming up, as you'd expect, with a weakening storm, but still, that's a very, very low pressure number, amazingly low, and 40 miles to the south-southwest of Hattiesburg. Hattiesburg kind of up in here in Mississippi. Now here's where the storm is going to go. It's going to move to the north across Mississippi with hurricane force winds all the way there across Mississippi, and then still a problem in Tennessee, to the east of Memphis, between Memphis and Nashville, spreading across the Ohio Valley and eventually up into northern Canada or into southeastern Canada late in the week, but by that time it'll be mostly just a rainstorm. Now, just to look at the satellite picture, and here you see when the eye was still quite well developed. That was 12 hours ago, so that was about 1 o'clock in the morning. But already dry air had gotten in here on the west side and was eroding the west side of the eye, and that actually helped the wind situation in New Orleans a lot. Didn't help the water situation so much, but it helped the wind situation significantly because New Orleans ended up on the west side of the track. Now watch as the eye goes. There it goes just west of downtown New Orleans, but it went right over the eastern suburbs of New Orleans, and there you see where the eye is now, just there at the corner of Louisiana and up into Mississippi. But we see that the storm extends well over here. There's Panama City right there, well over there to the east, still just piling the Gulf water up on the coast there. But things over here on the west side have diminished dramatically, although there's still a tail in here, and that tail is going to pull to the north with the hurricane. So it's not completely over in New Orleans, but it is diminishing now, and they're going to be able to get out and really inspect and see exactly what has gone on. Now we know some very bad things have gone on with a levee breach on the east side of the city and flooding up to the rooftops over there and people stranded and other flooding in New Orleans. Here's David Bernard. He's very familiar with New Orleans, covered hurricanes there for many years, and he can explain exactly what we think has happened versus what we know has happened there in New Orleans today. David?
All right, Brian, and we're going to use real-time Doppler 4 here as a little bit of a tool, and we're going to first look down into this area, and when we do that, this is around the area where the first levee breach was in eastern portions of New Orleans. There have been unconfirmed reports, according to a city councilman there, that he's received over 120 calls from people wanting to be rescued. Unfortunately, this is a part of town that is very poor, and many people in that area of the city, I imagine, would not have had means of evacuating. So that's going to be a developing situation throughout the day and tomorrow, depending on how much water got into this area. It's very densely populated as well. The second phase of storm surge flooding in southeast Louisiana is now underway. Now that the center is up here in southwest Mississippi, north winds are starting to now push the Lake Pontchartrain water down into areas west of the city that has no hurricane levee protection. So I'm going to show you the map of the hurricane levee. We've been showing this to you all morning and afternoon of New Orleans. Remember, the red line around the city is where the hurricane protection levee is. Here's the New Orleans airport. On the other side of this red line, this is St. Charles and St. John Parish. A lot of people live out here. There is minimal, if any, hurricane levee protection protection, and now the storm surge is working from north to south, at last report, from Lake Pontchartrain through the wetlands and down here into these communities along the Mississippi River. And that was the latest statement from the Weather Service, is that major inundation is beginning in these areas. And so this was another vulnerable area, and because they're outside hurricane protection levee and they know they're vulnerable, it's a mandatory evacuation area, just like anywhere south of Lake Pontchartrain is. That's the story that's developing now. So we had the east side of town first, with the storm surge coming in from the east, and now the water coming off the lake from the north. Now in New Orleans, there's a hurricane protection levee here along the lake. So the densely populated area of New Orleans is largely protected. There are some reports of 3 to 4 feet of water in this part of New Orleans known as Lakeview, because by its name it's up by the lake. That could be for a number of reasons. There could have been some water that went over the top of the levee, but it also could be because the pumping system in New Orleans that we use on a daily basis down there to drain rainwater out of the city failed, and they don't think the pumps will be operating again until later this afternoon. So that 3 to 4 feet of water could also be just because of the heavy rain, which could have been anywhere between 8 and 15 inches so far, according to the National Weather Service out of New Orleans. So those are the two most recent developments in New Orleans. Because the storm did go just on the east side of town, though, the most catastrophic storm surge situation where all of these levees would have been breached was avoided. But there is still quite a bit of flooding being reported. And also right here it says Chalmette. They are mostly in the levee protection area, but a lot of this parish isn't. Nevertheless, there are reports that even inside this levee that there is up to 12 feet of water being reported in some neighborhoods down in here, and a lot of people live in this area. I'm not sure why that is. It could be that right here the levee did breach here in Araby, which is close to Chalmette, so this could be as a result of the levee breach, and again, we don't know how large that was, so it is possible that these floodwaters coming in from the Gulf could be covering a wider area than expected. That's the one detail we don't know about, Brian, and I am fearful of that since we don't know how bad this breach might have been. Even though it is a small area of the city compared to the entire metropolitan area, it is a highly populated region.
All right, David. Well, information will continue to come in because communications is so difficult there. Telephone lines are down for the most part, although we have occasionally gotten a call out. And so it's very difficult to communicate within the city, no doubt, to figure out exactly what is happening. But the weather in New Orleans right now is improving dramatically. Now, the weather in Mississippi and Alabama and the Florida Panhandle is only very slowly improving, and nobody has ventured outside. So we haven't heard anything really significant there, but we know very bad things, no doubt, have happened in Mississippi. But it's going to take quite some time before weather is sufficient that they can go out and take a look, and we can find out exactly what's happened. All right, we'll continue to watch it here. We'll check back with you later on. Elliot?
Brian, David, thank you. Well, here in South Florida, Broward County Public Schools reopened today, while Miami-Dade County Public Schools remain closed. This update now from Miami-Dade Schools. A decision on whether or not to reopen tomorrow will be made this afternoon. As soon as it's made, we'll bring it to you. There are about 14 schools without power, and we will keep you posted on the situation with these school openings again in Miami-Dade County. Don't forget to keep it right here, your weather station, for continuing coverage of Hurricane Katrina all day long and tonight on CBS 4 News. First at 5, now we return you to regular programming.
With your life.
After Katrina, for the latest on the local cleanup, keep it on CBS 4 News.
Now live from CBS 4 Weather Control, this is a Hurricane Katrina update.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Elliot Rodriguez, and these are live pictures now from Mobile, Alabama, where there is massive flooding after Hurricane Katrina moved through this morning. Even the interstate in Mobile is underwater. The water from Mobile Bay spilling into the downtown section of that city and flooding the streets. Mobile sits slightly inland on the Mobile River, which empties into the bay. Forecasters had predicted a 20-foot, possibly a 20-foot storm surge as Katrina went through that area. Now, in New Orleans, Louisiana, there is grave concern there. Hurricane Katrina ripped 2 holes in the roof of the Louisiana Superdome, which is being used as a shelter for thousands of people. Emergency officials now say they consider the opening small, about 15 to 20 feet long and 4 to 5 feet wide. However, water is leaking inside elevators and stairwells as those people are hunkered down at the Superdome there in New Orleans. In the downtown section of New Orleans, the images that are coming in are impressive. Now, the storm shattered scores of windows in high-rise buildings, as you saw there. It toppled trees, brought down traffic lights and signs everywhere. Officials in New Orleans are reporting they cannot reach a building blown down by the hurricane. Residents of the building on the Mississippi's West Bank called 911 to say people might be trapped inside that building. Now, increasing reports of damage across central Mississippi at this hour, as well as other parts inland. Rising water is being driven across the beach and into residential areas. Billboards, as you see here, and buildings are damaged throughout the city of Gulfport, Louisiana, and traffic signals are down. Gulfport, Mississippi. Correction there. The Gulfport Memorial Hospital also experienced major damage and broken windows. The Beau Rivage Hotel and Casino, one of the premier gambling locations in Biloxi, is also reporting some severe flooding damage. We also have some pictures out of Hammond, Louisiana, another area hit hard by Katrina. You can see the down signs. There's extensive flooding there. You see a power truck out there, but you would think at this point nobody is working on any power lines. There are reports of hundreds of thousands of people without power in that part of the country, as there are also several thousand people in South Florida as we recover from the storm here. Let's get the very latest right now on what the storm is doing at this hour, and our chief meteorologist, Bryan Norcross, in Weather Control. Bryan?
All right, Elliot, let's take a look at real-time Doppler 4. We can locate the eye up here, and if you notice, the weather has now wrapped all the way around the eye again. It's extremely impressive, considering that the eye is over land, but the storm is slowly weakening. But still, you can see the inflow here coming in, continuing to push water in. These are very strong bands, many tornado warnings in Mississippi. There's also a bit of a little band here coming into New Orleans again, so the weather has once again deteriorated there. But in general, the severe weather is over. Now, there's another severe band of potential tornadoes included, going from Fort Walton Beach up into the western part of Florida. And here you can see the flow up into Mobile Bay. But this is an extremely vulnerable part of the world. It's just amazing here that this doesn't happen more often, because everything is so low and flat, and flooding is just going to be a huge problem all across the Gulf Coast there, all the way to the Florida Panhandle from the New Orleans area. Now, here's the latest advisory as of 1 o'clock, 30.8, 89.6. Winds at that time down to 105, moving north at 17, and that's good that it's moving fast, just to get it out of the way and get the rain over with and get the winds dying down, so people can go about trying to find out what has happened. The pressure was 932 at that time, but no doubt it's coming up as the center is over land, 40 miles southwest of Hattiesburg. Now, we have many reports in from parts of New Orleans that we have not seen any pictures of, so we don't want anybody to think that something severe has not happened in New Orleans. We just don't know how severe it is in the suburbs of the city that where the reporters were clustered downtown, out on the eastern edge, and maybe even on the north side of the city, that would be very vulnerable to flooding. Some of that is confirmed. Some people trapped are confirmed, but we don't know to what extent all that is going on right now, and probably won't for a while, because even the police, we understand, they said they would get there about 3 o'clock Central Time, so it's still time to go before they would get out there. All right, we'll keep you up to date from here. Right now, the storm is weakening, but still a lot of bad weather going on along the Gulf Coast. Elliot?
Okay, Bryan, thank you. Well, here in South Florida, Miami-Dade Public Schools will reopen tomorrow. They remain closed today because about a dozen schools are still without power, but that's expected to be restored by tomorrow. In Broward County, the schools did reopen today. And don't forget to keep it right here, your weather station, for continuing coverage of Hurricane Katrina all day long and tonight on CBS 4 News. First at 5, we'll join you with another update in 1 hour. I'm Elliot Rodriguez. Now back to regular programming.
Clean up at home to the Gulf Coast destruction. CBS 4 News is covering every angle of Katrina with Brian Andrews live in New Orleans. Plus, Bryan Norcross and David Bernard on where the storm's headed. For the latest on Katrina, keep it on CBS 4 News.
Now live from CBS 4 Weather Control, this is a Hurricane Katrina update.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Elliot Rodriguez with the very latest on Hurricane Katrina. I want to go to live pictures right off the top. These pictures are from Mobile, Alabama, which is seeing devastating flooding as a result of the storm surge from this hurricane, and there is considerable damage throughout the area. We also have some pictures that are just in off the satellites. We're seeing them for the first time. This car in New Orleans, this is in the New Orleans area, and look what happened when this driver ventured in very dangerous terrain going into those floodwaters, and luckily, very luckily for this person, there was a witness nearby who responded by going to that car and getting this driver out of that vehicle. We're going to keep watching these pictures just in off the satellites from New Orleans. There you go. Very fortunate that there was somebody out there to help this gentleman who God knows why this person was driving a car in this type of flooding, but luckily this person rescued by a Good Samaritan there in New Orleans. On to some other pictures. Along the Common Street in the French Quarter of New Orleans, windows are blown out up and down the street. The floodwaters are rising, and down the street the rain looks like a white sheet of snow. That was the report that we heard earlier in the day from New Orleans. Emergency officials also reporting they cannot reach a building blown down by the hurricane, and it's believed people may be trapped inside, and police saying they cannot respond while the weather stayed dangerous, so they were telling people they had to wait until it was safe enough for police and fire rescue crews to respond to these emergencies. On to Mobile, Alabama again. Video just in of a roof collapse at a child care center. The outer bands of the storm pounded the port city with hurricane strength gusts. Luckily, we hope that this had been evacuated already. There were hopefully no children inside. There have been no reports of anybody injured as a result of this, but the water from Mobile Bay spilling into the downtown part of the city, flooding streets and several buildings. And in Biloxi, Mississippi, another hard-hit area, the hurricane's strong winds ripping part of the roof of this Comfort Inn hotel. The roof tile shredded off, then the plywood flew off, crashing to the ground below and into some parked vehicles. A very powerful and devastating storm. And to get the very latest on Katrina, let's go to Weather Control and our Chief Meteorologist, Bryan Norcross. Bryan.
Elliot, going back to that video of that car driving into that water, that is a very well-known in New Orleans area that floods very, very badly. Every time they have heavy rain, for many, many years, that area is flooded. Now, David Bernard was telling me they put in some pumps to try and help that situation, but, you know, we've seen so much video there, and you know, if you notice, that car had his back window blown out, too, so there's some bizarre story going on there, you can bet. Now, the weather in New Orleans right now is quite gusty, but not terrible. This is actually part of a band that's now just moved north of the city. It's been over the downtown area, but this seems to be the last of it, and this is going to kind of rotate up into the storm, and that will be that. Now, on the wider view here, you can see where the center is up here in Mississippi, not too far from Hattiesburg, and still this major band is feeding in right over the Mobile area. Mobile, Alabama, reporting winds now gusting to 77 miles an hour and sustained up in the 45-mile-an-hour range. That's in Mobile, and also over in Pensacola, still strong winds. So there's a lot of strong wind here on this side in this channel of air that's feeding up into what's left of Hurricane Katrina, and it still is a hurricane. Here are the numbers as of 3 o'clock, just in. 31.4, 89.6, 95-mile-an-hour winds now. So Katrina down to a Category 1 storm, but of course it's centered way up. This actually, because of the way the computer works, this was the position at 11 o'clock. It's actually centered way up here now in Alabama, 20 miles west-southwest of Hattiesburg, and the pressure up now to 955. So the The pressure is coming up and the storm is weakening, but it's expected to maintain hurricane strength all the way across the state of Louisiana as it goes up there tonight. And many, many tornado warnings coming out in Mississippi and Alabama there in that band on the right side that's going through Mobile and points north. It's just constant. We get them in here at Weather Control. Just Alabama, Alabama, Mississippi, Alabama, Alabama, issued by the National Weather Service office there in Mobile. So that will be interesting to see what that story was, because nobody from New Orleans would have ever driven into that water. There's no way. There's a big railroad bridge right in front of you, and that road goes down under the railroad bridge there as you go up on I-10. So there is something something to that bizarre story. Elliot?
Okay, Brian, thank you very much. Miami-Dade Fire Rescue's Urban Search and Rescue Team has been activated and will deploy to Mississippi today. They're departing, in fact, this afternoon from Miami-Dade Fire Rescue headquarters in Doral. Well, here in South Florida, we're recovering from Hurricane Katrina, which hit us on Thursday. Miami-Dade Public Schools will reopen tomorrow. That decision was made this afternoon. Again, Miami-Dade Public Schools will reopen tomorrow. They remain closed today because about a dozen schools had no power, but that's expected to be restored by tomorrow. Schools in Broward County did reopen for classes today. And don't forget to keep it right here, your weather station, for continuing coverage of Hurricane Katrina all day long and tonight on CBS 4 News, first at 5. We'll see you then.
I like being able to